Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Well, they're interchangeable. Michael Steele, NRC chairman, says Fannie and Freddie were created in the 1970s as private corporations protected by government charters. They were responsible for bundling shady mortgages, underpinning the risky derivatives that tanked Wall Street. These government chartered companies have been in the fiscal toilet for years, run by Democratic party hacks, raking in tens of millions of dollars in salaries and bonuses. The Fannie and Freddie bailout will cost taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars, far more than the AIG bailout. Fannie and Freddie control half the mortgages in the U.S., so their insolvency and mismanagement affect every other financial institution trading mortgage-backed securities. So far, Fannie and Freddie have received $146 billion in taxpayer-funded bailouts, and they'll likely be the greatest taxpayer cost from the subprime mortgage bust. R.G. Wilmers, chairman and CEO, M&T Bank Corporation, reveals the magnitude of the Fannie-Freddie problem. At the end of 2009, their total debt outstanding, either held directly on their balance sheets or as guaranteed on mortgage securities they'd sold to investors, was $8.1 trillion. That compares to $7.8 trillion in total marketable debt outstanding for the entire U.S. government. The Fannie-Freddie debt is not reflected on the national balance sheet. Furthermore, from 2001 through 2006, Fannie and Freddie spent $123 million to lobby Congress, the second highest lobbying total after the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the country. That lobbying was complemented by sizable direct political contributions to members of Congress. Imagine a quasi-government organization lobbying and contributing taxpayer funds to congressmen for favorable political treatment. It's incest, pure and simple. This is not private enterprise. It's crony capitalism in which public subsidies are turned into private riches. In other words, Fannie-Freddie profits are privatized, tens of millions of salaries, while losses are socialized, taxpayer bailouts. So far, all financial reform legislation bypasses the Fannie-Freddie mess and exempts them from reform. Fannie and Freddie need dismantling, but no one knows how or has the courage to. Greece. At first blush, U.S. taxpayers were relieved not to have Europe's social and fiscal problems with bankrupt Greece. Total Greece bailout is $146 billion, of which $106 billion comes from Europe and $39 billion from the IMF. However, before U.S. taxpayers sigh in relief, remember that about 25% of IMF funding comes from the U.S. taxpayers. The WSJ, May 5th, says the U.S. quota for the IMF Greek loan is 17%, $6.6 billion, plus or minus depending on IMF calculations. And the U.S. taxpayer is on the hook for this. Then before you could say Greek tragedy, the EU, with IMF help, on May 9th, decided to tarp itself and pumped $1,972 billion into European system, despite the fact the 1992 Maastricht Treaty expressly prohibits bailouts. The WSJ, May 11th, says the EU's intervention merely transformed those risks from banks and other creditors to taxpayers and the European Central Bank. European taxpayers will have the biggest liability, which is appropriate, as it's a European problem. However, unwitting U.S. taxpayers via the IMF may be liable for up to $64 billion of this newest European bailout. Isn't globalization fun? California. California is Greece on the U.S. West Coast. It is a cannery in the coal mine of prolific social and welfare spending sustained by excessive taxation. Investors Business Daily reports California has among the highest state income and sales taxes in the nation. Unemployment is 12.6, one of the highest in the nation. Going against the national trend, union membership is growing instead of declining. Unfunded pension and health care liabilities for state workers top $500 billion, and the annual pension contribution has climbed from $320 million to $7.3 billion in less than a decade. Recent polls show Californians in a deep funk over the state's prospects. A new study of corporate leaders in Chief Executive Magazine shows why. Asked to rank the states by business climate, CEOs put California dead last. Texas was number one. California's Milken Institute showed California suffering a collapse of its manufacturing sector on a magnitude of the one that killed Michigan's economy. Since 2001, while politicians dither and spend, 634,000 factory jobs have disappeared, along with 34% of the industrial base. From 2003 to 2007 alone, 79,000 jobs were lost due to excessive regulation and too high taxes. By the way, folks, those of you in New Hampshire, Bill Binney, he said he didn't ship his business out of California and move it to Mexico. He did. Why didn't he move it to New Hampshire? Okay, but if California's private companies are suffering, its public sector sure isn't. Yeah. From 2001 to 2009, California lost 235,000 net private sector jobs, but gained 163,700 government jobs. Good ratio. Those cushy union jobs also pay more than comparable private jobs and provide gold-plated benefits. Now Californians find they actually have to pay for this foolishness. Nationwide, with the notable exception of California, most state and local governments are laying off employees, while the federal government is hiring employees at a brisk rate. California Democrats, who've had a virtual look on the legislature since 1950, have run amok, putting the state in grave fiscal danger by spending wildly, raising taxes, and hyper-regulating California's economy. Contrast California with New Jersey, which is in a similar predicament, but whose new governor, Christie, in just 100 days is taking on the unions, slashing spending, and getting state government under control. Property tax reform is also needed in the big suburban counties of New Jersey and New York, where people already pay 8% of their income in real estate levies. New York local taxes are 79% above the national average, and the state with $92.9.2 billion deficit. Wow. The Wall Street Journal, May 5th, says Los Angeles is facing a terminal fiscal crisis. Between now and 2014, the city will likely declare bankruptcy. The average annual salary for San Francisco city employees is $93,000 before benefits. Another fiscal bomb is set to go off on January 1st, 2012, when Assembly Bill 32, signed into law by Governor Schwarzenegger in 2006, goes into effect. It requires CO2 levels to be reduced to 1990 levels by 2020. A 2009 study by California State University economists found that implementation costs of AB 32 could easily exceed $100 billion and would raise the annual household cost of living for Californians by $7,857 by 2020. The California state government is suicidal, taxing itself into fiscal obliviation. Wow. It seems the tax revolt is ready to ignite in the states of California, New Jersey, and New York, which might further kindle a national tax revolt. I'm going to call it quits here. I can't even talk. We'll continue on with the natural resources taxes and the other taxes in the next video. Peace out, all.